Part 1, Class AA. But what they've also done is they've put in Part 20, Class AA, Class AB, Class AC, and Class AD.
Oh my God, that's confusing, Linda. Can't they make it easy? Hi everybody, it's Andrew Roberts here from the Great Property Meet and Linda Wright from Planet Right Town at Planning Consultancy and Development Services. And we're here with another fabulous update on enlargement of dwelling houses and mixed-use buildings by the addition of additional stories, up to 2 additional stories. So Linda, I'm looking forward to hearing some good news today. What can you tell us?
No, honestly, I've got this feeling that there are 14-year-olds in Whitehall who are of the gaming fraternity, and they're looking at this and giggling to themselves and saying, how can we make this more confusing? And they've succeeded, quite frankly, because it's a bit of a mess. But it's what a lot of people have been looking for. You remember we did a video about, in June, they brought out upward extensions to purpose-built blocks of flats. It's nothing to do with that. It's now moved on in that Part 1, Class AA. You can enlarge a dwelling house by adding stories onto it. And you can add a 2-story house by putting 2 stories on. And you can add to a 1-story house, in anybody's term, a bungalow, and put 1 additional story on that. Now that is Class AA. Don't forget all of these things. Don't start going out there now and ripping the roof off a bungalow and putting extensions on. It's badged as permitted development, but it's not permitted development as we know it. It needs the prior approval of the council. And the prior approval of the council means before you start work. It's prior. So don't think you can go ahead and do it. Although it's saying it's permitted development, it's not really. Once, if you get prior approval of the council, you submit the application, get the prior approval, that then lasts for 3 years. So it's very similar to a planning application, but it's permitted development, but not as we know it, Jim. It is permitted development that requires a prior approval application. So that is Part 1, Class AA, enlargement of dwelling houses. 2 stories on a 2-story house, 1 story on a 1-story house. There are pages and pages of conditions and limitations.
So this is awesome news. Does this start soon?
Absolutely, it starts. Now, this is the weird thing. 9 AM on the 31st of August. The last one that we talked about the other day was 10 AM on the 31st of August. This is 9 AM, 31st of August this year.
So that makes sense. The other one was 10 AM to give the planners time to deal with all of the paperwork for this one.
No.
So they've got an hour to get them all approved.
No, trust me, the planners in local planning authorities are going to be so stretched and so stressed by all of this, because just like I'm having to do, we're having to learn virtually an entirely new planning system. And that's what the government said they were going to do. They were going to take an axe to the planning system because it's so old. But there are so many nuances to this, and so many, if you read one bit and you think, oh yeah, I can go ahead and do that, and then you go, no, but there's a limitation here that says you can't. So, and it's all about when dwellings were built. There's all sorts of issues about where they are, whether it's going to impact on other people, what the neighbourhood impact's going to have. There's lots and lots of mini requirements that you need to. It's a tick box thing.
Well, that's brilliant, because I've got some Victorian terraces and you're telling me I can do this on terraces? It's awesome.
Not on Victorian terraces. If you look at, I've done a 1-page sheet again. Doesn't have an awful lot of detail on it, but yes, thank you. It gives you the guide. It gives you an overview. You're going to have to go in and read the legislation, or come and have a telephone consultation with me or ask me to do an assessment of a building. But you can only do this on buildings that were built between 1st of July 1948 and, get this, 28th of October 2018. So that, I'm afraid, takes your Victorian terraces out. And I mean, you know, even the interwar terraces, it takes those out as well. So if they're built before 1948, then no, this won't work on this. And you can understand that, because if you're adding, to be perfectly honest, from my point of view, the first thing that lots of people are going to have to check with this is that their actual foundations will take another couple of stories or another one story. And you know, people are going to get very excited about it and go, oh yeah, we'll go out and do this. But one of the first things you're going to have to do is get a structural surveyor to look at the foundations and find out whether your building will actually accommodate this level of additional weight and load bearing that's going to be put on the building. So it's not just about planning. There's all sorts of other things to consider as well.
Well, I would agree with you. I mean, some of those post-war houses were built in a really poor way. Yeah. They were concrete houses with steel bars in, and they suffer with concrete cancer, so they couldn't take the structural load of sticking something on. Yeah. And you've got to go through all of building regs on these as well. So it's not just a case of bish bash bosh, chuck another story up.
No, it isn't, but it's you know, we can't get away from this. This is good news. It doesn't mean that it's just, you know, you can just go ahead and do it. As we've said, it's a prior approval. How fast this fast track process is going to be, I don't think it's going to be that fast, because again, I think planners are going to be struggling. A lot of planners are still working from home. So I'm finding lots of delays in lots of councils because of that. Whether that will improve once people start to get back into offices, don't know. But everybody is looking at this and thinking, oh my God, we've got to learn a whole different new planning system now.
So I've got some shops and some offices, and I can put another 2 floors of shops and offices on the top, can I?
Right. This is part, so that was, we've done class AA, part 1. That was just about dwelling houses, adding stories to dwelling houses. What you can do in part 20, the A classes, AA, AB, AC, AD. Sorry to be boring and repetitive, but I'm trying to get in the, you know, there's 4 separate classes. The first class, which is AA part 20, is for detached buildings in commercial or mixed use. And the intention is that you put additional stories on here to create additional flats. Let's remember, this is all about delivering 1 million homes. It's the government's golden thread that's running through everything, delivering 1 million homes. So what they're looking for you to do is on commercial or mixed use properties, if you want to add stories onto those, then it's to create additional flats. Again, massive amount of conditions and limitations on these. Also, what you can do, that's a detached building, but you would have thought that it was only going to be detached building. No, 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 no. Terrace buildings in commercial or mixed use, you can add stories onto those, but again, it is for the creation of flats. So it's the creation of additional dwelling units. So those are your 2 classes, AA and AB of part 20, which give you the possibility on commercial and mixed use to add floors. So many limitations, so many things that you have to be aware of. These, and you're going to ask me about, can I do this on my Victorian villa shop? Possibly. This is a different date. It starts at 1st of July 1948, but it goes up to March 2018, not October 2018, March 2018.
It was the quality of construction just between March and October. I mean, it was terrible that year. Like a vintage wine.
Well, maybe. I don't know what the quality of construction was between 1948 and 2018. I have no idea. I've no idea.
It's like one of them bar games where you get a bottle, you spin it, and you go, right, well, I've marched for this one in 2018.
I'm sure there are explanatory memoranda for all of these pieces of legislation. Not had time to go through them all yet because they go on for pages as well. So once I've had time to go through, I'm sure it will explain somewhere in there why these dates, they do look quite arbitrary, but I'm sure there are reasons for them. Now,
I know it was the housing minister's birthday, his wife's birthday, the anniversary.
Well, I mean, honestly, you could be right. You absolutely could be right. I don't know where they've got these things from at all. So there must be a reason for them. Honestly, there must be a reason for them. But if there is, I'll find out and I'll let you know.
So although they're badged as permitted development, this is still a prior approval process. So effectively, it's a 6-8 week process at least.
Yeah. And one of the videos that I do want to do with you for everybody is the new prior approval system. As far as I know, the prior approval system again is not as we knew it. Whereas with office to residential conversions, if the council failed to make a decision within 56 days, within 8 weeks, on day 57, you have consent by default, deemed consent. As far as my reading of this is, that has been removed and the council can continue. They're supposed to try and deal with these with 8 weeks. Well, we know how that's going to go, don't we? But they actually can go beyond. There is no deemed consent. There is no consent by default mechanism that's coming in with these prior approvals. And although try and deal with it within 8 weeks, it can go over, it can go longer. So that's not really not really helpful, and it's not really what you're looking for in a fast track system to create more homes, because classes A, C and AD are terrace buildings and detached and terrace. I don't know why they've done it. It hurts my brain, this does, because they've done it all the wrong way around. So in use as dwelling houses, if they're detached and terrace, if they're dwelling houses, so it's not just the mixed use, it's not just the commercial and the mixed use, it's dwelling houses as well that you can add flats on top of. But I think what we really need to do is, because there is so much information in this, because it's quite confusing, I think what we need to do is drill down into these and try and, I mean, if anybody out there thinks this is a good idea, please let Andrew know, let us know, send me, a message on social media. If you think, oh my God, no, we don't want to listen to any more, just shut up, leave us alone, please don't do any more videos, we can't stand it, then let us know. But if you want us to drill down into what you should be looking for these, so, I've had emails already saying, oh, this is a link to something on Rightmove or Zoopla or whatever, can I do it on this? And it's not quite that simple, as you can see. Lots of limitations. One of the big limitations with the additions is that if you have used any of the Part 3 changes of use, and you know about Class M, Class N, Class O, P, PA and Q, agricultural buildings, if you've done the change of use, you can't use this prior approval system. You can't put additions onto buildings that have already used a prior approval system for conversion. So that's one of the big limitations. So if, for example, you've had a 2 or 3 story building that was offices, you've used the prior approval system under Class O, you've got prior approval, you've converted it from offices to residential, and now you're thinking, oh, I can go ahead. This is an older one, but you're thinking it's a similar system. You're thinking, oh, I can go ahead and use this. You can't. So they have to be purpose built. These have to be dwelling houses, not that have been converted, that are purpose built as dwelling houses. And so it means that lots of people go and find at auctions bungalows. So it now means that under this system, again, we've got to look at when it was built and when it was finished and all of that. You could go ahead and put an additional story onto the top of a bungalow. So that is something that we need to look at.
You're starting to fry my brains, Linda. I mean,
you both
have a conversation that there's always more bad news. So what we're summarising here is, if you've already applied for a Class M, a Class G, a Class O, prior approval, you're prohibited from doing these new changes. That's the old system of still full planning.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So if you have taken advantage of that prior approval system, don't think that you can move on with these because you can't. So if you've got a single dwelling house and it's 2 stories and you've done it by conversion through, say, Class M, and you think, oh, I've got a dwelling house, I'll go ahead and I'll put another 2 stories on top of this. No, it won't work. So there are lots of trip hazards in this, and you'd be running along and no, there's a rock there, there's a branch there. So there's all sorts of things that can, and in some cases there's a dirty great big hole that you can fall into. So there are lots of things that you just have to know, and it's quite laborious and quite boring, and you have to work your way through the legislation and go, yeah, was it built between 1st of July 1948 and March or October? Tick. And then you have to go through down to the next one. Is it a tick? You know, did I do it by the prior approval system before? No. Tick. So it goes on and on and on. We could be here all day. We could be here till middle of next week. So let us know if you want us to go through this in, I don't know about fine detail. It might be desperately boring for people, but there are other limitations, such as, and I've put it on this sheet, previous extensions. So if you've previously extended upwards a building, you can't then go ahead. It has to be the original dwelling house as built. Maximum height and overall increase in height. And actually they put a limit on the height of each story, each floor to ceiling heights. Type of roof pitch, where you put windows, impact on neighbours, overlooking, loss of privacy, loss of light is another one, and impact on a protected view. I've yet to see a definition of exactly what that means, but I'm sure somebody will come up with one at some point. So lots to think about, lots of potential opportunity, but it's sort of a narrow chink of light that you can see. You have to get through that narrow chink and put a tick in all of the boxes before you can come out the other end and do a prior approval application to the council. And please remember, although it's badged as permitted development, please don't go ahead and start doing this stuff. If you do, it will put you out of the game for submitting a prior approval. Once you've started something, the council have the right to say, no, it doesn't comply with the prior approval criteria, and they can refuse to accept an application or just refuse the application.
So what we're effectively saying is this is a simplified planning process subject to you meeting a series of tick boxes. We've got a link down below to download the latest relevant checklist sheet or user guide on enlargement of a dwelling house by construction of additional stories. What we're saying is we can't put offices or shops on upper floors. It's got to be C3 dwelling houses, but we can do it to commercial or mixed use, but it's got to have been the original state of the building. You cannot have applied any other prior approvals. I think we actually need to do an explanatory video for the folks out there to actually explain the difference between the permitted development old system and permitted development new system, because what we're looking at is a complete baby out with the bathwater exercise.
It is, you're right. And you've just raised a very, very good point, because lots of people who operate HMOs will be looking at this with glee. The conversion and the creation of the units is for Class C3 only. It's not for Class C4, it's not for sui generis use. So these flats are not to be used for HMO purposes. If they are, it literally is for Class C3. So it's single dwelling houses, not to create HMOs. If you wanted to do that, you would then have to apply for a full planning application for the change of use. There's an argument that these flats could then, if they were tenanted by a single tenant, they then have the benefit of permitted development rights. But I think that will have been removed somewhere, or the council will put a condition on to say that it's removed. So it's for single use flats, not HMOs.
Well, Linda,
On that note,
fabulous again, having a real in-depth dive onto this, where what we're doing is blowing up some of the press reports that have been out there that permitted development creates slum buildings. This certainly isn't. I mean, the amount of involvement of the council and the checking processes and the compliance that you've got to go through, I don't see how permitted development is going to create slums. If anything, it's going to create more jobs for planners and more jobs for UCL lecturers as well. On that note, we'll see you soon. Cheers, everybody.
bye.